Hello and welcome back to Mark's NOTCAST, in which a middle-aged man talks to his mobile phone about records he likes, dislikes or owns. Today is the 17th of July, I think, on 2025, and I am therefore going to be talking about a band that have recently reformed to huge amounts of cash, the Oasis, Britpop's premier rock and roll popular beat combo from Manchester, and their third studio album released on the 21st of August 1997, Be Here Now. So first and foremost, obviously Oasis have reformed. They are doing their divorce tour at the moment to fund Noel's divorce. No interviews, the revolution will not be televised, and experiencing it vicariously through others thanks to the miracle of YouTube. Probably the best place to start is not to talk about that, because that's going to come later on. Instead, I'm going to cynically pump the Oasis reunion to plug up my dwindling viewing numbers. Actually, no, I'm not. I do these things when I feel like it and when it feels like it's the right thing to do. My mind percolates through probably 10, 15 different ideas around what am I going to do next? And every once in a while, it settles on something and says that. Today, for your listening pleasure, I am talking about Be Here Now. So, first and foremost, released on the 21st of August 1997, which means that Britpop died at 12 minutes past 10 in the morning of Monday, the 21st. Actually, no, it was Friday, wasn't it? On the 21st of August 1997. It was the week that Britpop probably peaked, in so much as Suede and the Manic Street Preachers headlined the Reading Festival. Oasis released their third album that sold approximately 8 million copies. And before we get too much further into that, I'm going to talk about why Oasis felt that it was really, really important to sell so many copies of an album. Whilst Noel said that nothing other than the best LP of 1997 is good enough, at the same point, Oasis constantly said that they wanted to be the biggest band in the world, bigger than God, because biggest and best aren't always the same thing, as many people that like the Velvet Underground will tell you. And the problem with wanting to be the biggest band in the world is that, like all political careers, it is doomed to end in failure, because at some point you stop headlining the Moon and stop doing 20 shows at Nebworth. You're always going to have a peak, and you're always going to have, therefore, a dip in your popularity and your fortunes, which reminds me of when the Oasis that had everybody in Oasis apart from Noel, called BDI, were playing at various places like the London Hammersmith Odeon. Sometimes they did struggle to sell it out. It didn't sell out instantly. It took a little while for them to sell tickets, which, when you consider that that's Liam, Gem, Andy Bell and Chris Sharrock, who were in the 2009 lineup of Oasis, must make you wonder. If you want to be the biggest band in the world, you've also got to accept that you aren't going to be the biggest band in the world forever. And you know, that is just the law, that what goes up, and my God, what a lot went up their noses, must also come down. So Bono was asked, when you think of Q magazine, what do you think? And he thought, I think of a nice shiny CD. Well, when I think of cocaine, I think about Oasis's Be Here Now, which I'm sure sounds amazing on cocaine and absolutely not amazing if you're not. And of course, well, you might as well do the White Line. We're all doing kind of, you know, listening to them, but when you listen to the records outside of that adrenaline buzz, you end up with what could possibly be just another Oasis album. Now, if you're AC/DC, it's not a problem. Every AC/DC album sounds like every other AC/DC album. Every AC/DC song sounds like every other AC/DC song. And every one of them has a smutty title, like Great Balls, Big Balls, Heat Seeker, Thrill Seeker, Money Shot, etc., etc. Oasis are pretty much the AC/DC of indie. They hit their template with their first album. They didn't really change it. And the risk with not changing that template is that you remain fixed in one place whilst the world changes around you. And by August 1997, the hangover, the legacy, to use a dreadful word, of Britpop was starting to come along. Blur had read the tea leaves and already come out with the somewhat alt-rock version of Blur. Suede had just brought a cap to their coming up tour and were then going to go a little bit weird with head music. Pulp were already starting to sow the seeds of the inevitable Hangover album, This Is Hardcore, coming up in an episode near you, kids. Oasis doggedly determined on, and to quote the great Jarvis Cocker, the best time to leave a party is 5 minutes before you realise that you should have left 5 minutes ago. Oasis stayed at the party until the lights were switched on and they were dragged out. Be Here Now is an album too far, primarily because it's too long. It's got too many songs on it, too many guitar solos. No album needs to be 72 minutes long. Yes, I'm talking to you, Tori Amos. No album needs to be 72 minutes long. Most great albums can be done in about 51 minutes or less. Be Here Now is no exception. And very quickly, I will just point out that there are some terrible songs on this album. There are some great songs on this album. My favourite Oasis song is on this album. But were I in charge, were I God, which of course I'm not, I would change the lineup of this album considerably. And I would ditch Magic Pie, I Hope, I Think, I Know, The Girl in the Dirty Shirt, and I would bin them off and I would replace them with Stay Young and Going Nowhere, which means you'd probably get about a 58-minute album. And that's using the existing mixes of the tracks. You could probably edit down all around the world from being 12 minutes long, because no song needs to be 12 minutes long unless it's 3 Days by Jane's Addiction or Autobahn by Kraftwerk. You could edit that down to a very reasonable 7 minutes and still leave the LP in glorious, fabulous style. With Oasis wanting to be the biggest band in the world, two things happened which saw the end of them being the crest of the wave of the so-called Britpop period, which I don't like that word, but anyone who's there probably doesn't. The first one is when somebody listened to this album for the first time and thought, I like it. It's not very good, is it? The second one was the death of Princess Diana in late August 1997. And I was at home asleep after a banging Saturday night out with a bit of a headache. I was woken up by the home phone. My brother said, Princess Diana's dress is covered in blood. Well, more correctly to quote, Princess Di's got a new dress. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Because remember, I'd been asleep. It's covered in blood. What on earth are you talking about? She's died in a car crash in Paris. Oh, finally we get to what's going on. Get to the point of what's really happening, to quote David Bowie. And so therefore, of course, those two things really brought the definitive end to that period. There was a period where it slowly faded away. Britpop didn't kind of car crash. It just kind of saw itself out of the door slowly over a few months. And this was the death knell of it. So I have a theory about bands, and that theory is there are two types of bands. There are bands that are liked and there are bands that are loved. Bands that are loved, you never see their CDs in charity shops. You go to a charity shop, what bands do you never see? You never see Metallica. You hardly ever see Guns N' Roses. You rarely see U2 unless it's No Line on the Horizon. You see a lot of Oasis. And in 1998, after selling 8 million copies, Be Here Now was also the most traded in CD in second-hand CD stores in the whole of the UK. If you went to MVE, Music Video Exchange in Greenwich, Notting Hill, Central Soho, for example, when there was a branch there, they would have like a row, like a shelf of Be Here Now, all about £1. I'm beginning to think Oasis never actually sold a brand new CD copy of Be Here Now after about February 1998, because everybody who wanted it had already bought it, and many people that didn't want it had already bought it and traded it in. It was basically the 90s indies equivalent of, I think, Paul Young's No Parlay album, which was a staple of charity shops and second-hand shops for a very long period of time. And this album was not birthed in the most amazing or auspicious of circumstances. So it really is no surprise that when you listen to it, it is a cocaine-fueled, brick-walled, overdriven mess of not enough songs and too many songs at exactly the same point in time. Noel had left the band in Charlotte, place, not a person, in 1996. And he said, I didn't want to be there anyway. I wasn't being prepared in a band with a bunch of people who were being like that to each other. And it's very clear, and Noel did this on other times. He left the band in Tokyo, I think, and wrote Talk Tonight. Or is it America? He left the band in the year 2000, and the band toured without him, with a stunt guy. And then obviously in 2009, he left the band for the fourth and final time. And what he was very clear about was setting boundaries. And you can see, if you've got a copy of this book, Forever the People, 6 months on the road with Oasis, and I just opened a page at random here, and it's page 160. It's where Liam is trying to talk to Noel about the band. And Liam is like, no, I've got to talk to you about the band. No, not now, Liam. I'm feeling shit. Just let me drink this in peace. Yeah, but Noel, it's important. No, Liam, let me drink this. We'll talk later. But no, Liam, leave me alone. And what we have is a situation where there's an antagonism between two brothers, and one of them can't seem to stop picking at the scab, and the other one is like, I just want a bit of peace and quiet, and the other one is kind of like antagonizing him. It's a theme that runs like a stick of rock all through Oasis, right down to the moment where Noel left the band in 2009. And when Noel left the band in 2009, he said, I should have been on top of the world. I should have been thinking about buying a beach. And instead I was arguing about sacking a tour manager. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. I wasn't happy. And, if it doesn't make you happy, don't do it. That's the bottom line. And of course, if you've got the money to not do it and you don't have to do it and you don't enjoy doing it, why do it? Unless it's to please other people. And you have to please yourself as well as other people in this life. You can't be a people pleaser if you're not pleasing yourself. Or as the cliche goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. And Noel quit the band. And he thought, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And Liam may have taken Noel for granted, thinking that Noel needed the band, after all, the lyrics to acquiesce, because we believe in each other and we need each other. But there was a point where it just became obvious that the band had gone too far and they needed to stop. So they went into the studio and they recorded Be Here Now in Abbey Road, and some other places as well, Maida Vale as well, I think. And there was as Liam was described by his security guards in one of the books, he was grossly unprofessional. So, for example, for the Unplugged session at MTV, he lost his voice by going in the pub for 2 days. When the band were recording the B-sides to All Around the World, being the Fame and Flashbacks, for example, Liam had laryngitis caused by being in the pub for 2 days. I think we're detecting a trend here, is Liam liked going to the pub and fucking up his voice and being unprofessional. And of course, if you're in a regular day job, you go on the piss for 2 days and you don't turn up for work and everybody knows you're not to work because you're drunk, you get fired. Not if you are in this band. And that's the thing, for people that feel that the usual rules of society don't apply to them for some reason, will always have a rude awakening at some point. And there is a rude awakening for a certain band member at some point in the future. But the band should have split at that point. Imagine your last show in the UK is Nebworth, you split on a high, What's the Story, Morning Glory is there, you're signed, sealed, delivered, you're legends forever. And you keep going. It's like making the fourth Indiana Jones film. Was the world clamouring for Be Here Now? Probably. Were egos? Yes. Bank managers? Yes. But should the band have made an album? Maybe. Not this one. Absolutely not. So they went into the studio in October 1996, and Noel said he felt the band should have recorded Be Here Now in May 1996 and ended the What's the Story Morning Glory campaign with the Nebworth shows, left it at that, taking a bit of a break, and then came back. And the whole album was predicated on a set of demos that were recorded in Mustique in July 1996. They're on the 3 CD Chasing the Sun editions of Be Here Now. And this features the demos for every track on the album plus a bunch of B-sides, or near enough every track on the album, and a couple of B-sides which were later repurposed, or more correctly, a couple of demos that were repurposed as B-sides. Angel Child, for example, is one of them. And Noel described those as the last good recording I ever did. Well, actually, Owen Morris did. And he wished they just overdubbed the demos, stuck Liam's vocals on it, stuck Bonehead's guitar on it, and then released it as an album. And the band were holidaying with Johnny Depp and their kids. They were no longer living their life in the city with no easy way out. They had beachfront properties, they had big mansions, a very big house in the country. And there was a sense of a circus around all of this that, and bearing in mind I was an Oasis fan at the time, not the world's biggest Oasis fan, but an Oasis fan at the time, I was bored of Oasis. I was bored of seeing them on the front covers of newspapers. I was bored of seeing them on the front cover of the NME, on ITV News. Liam Goes Out for a Pint of Milk was on the news, and I'm like, really? That's not news, Show me something that's actually worth watching. It was a circus. Insiders were cut off. They were distrusted. The band became not a nest of vipers, but it became effectively a snake that was eating itself. There was no outside view. So someone wasn't able to listen to the album and go, it's too long, too many guitar solos, and you guys have taken too much cocaine. Those people would find themselves fired pretty quickly. It was almost like a medieval court where the band was surrounded by yes men, and even Ridge Farm Studios was at the same point where the band thought that the Sun were bugging the phones of the offices to find out what was going on, and there was just basically too much cocaine. Some of the tracks on this have up to 40 different guitar overdubs on. That's colossal amount of overdubs. 10 channels alone of overdub guitar to thicken the sound. There was no sense of the record being played when I hear it. There was more a sense of it being constructed like a building. And the whole thing, that whole air comes through the album. First and foremost, though, the first thing you'll see about the record is the cover. And the cover is tasteless. It is by no means a good cover for an album. There is a photograph on the inside of the CD booklet, which I've turned my CD booklet around, but it's not on the other version of it, which is a map of the UK with the lyrics to Be Here Now written on them. And I've always thought that should have been the cover for the album, but that's not the cover of the album. The cover for the album is this. And by the way, I've stuck the sticker over Liam's face because I don't like him. I'm sure the feeling is mutual. He doesn't have a clue who I am. So let's go through the cover for Be Here Now, and let's point out, I think perhaps, where is not quite as amazing. The band became bigger than the music. The release date of the album is there on the sleeve. The white Rolls Royce suspended in the swimming pool, a sign of rock and roll excess. The number plate being the same number plate as I think is on the Police van, which is on the cover of the Beatles' Abbey Road album. Everything was preposterous. There's I think, was it Noel there looking through a telescope at the world. Bonehead is playing a huge key like a guitar. Giggsy is getting out of a swimming pool. Alan White is sitting on it. What does that signify? It doesn't signify anything. It's not a good album cover at all. It really, genuinely, just isn't a very good album cover at all. I don't know who signed it off, but it's not a great cover in the slightest. And it was so crazy that the newspapers they booked a hotel room in the hotel where this was shot, and they sent their own photographer along to take photographs of the album cover shoot, like from 15 feet away, and then sold that as a mail-in poster. And there was a court case about it, saying that was interfering with Oasis's intellectual property. There were people that relied on this band for a living that had nothing to do with the band and weren't in their employ. T-shirt sellers, newspaper photographers, the paparazzi, and there was a huge arrogance around the band. Obviously, Oasis were huge. The circus was in full effect. There was lots of monkeys in that circus, but there was an arrogance around it. Noel had renegotiated his publishing deal, for example. There was a sense that, of course, this is going to be number one. It sold 663,389 copies in the UK. It sold 130,000 copies in America. It sold 8 million copies across the world, of which probably 7 million were sold back to second-hand CD stores. The tour was in arenas in Europe and went to America. They went back to Europe. They did the UK. They then went to American arenas. They went to football stadiums. So they went to South America for the first time. And there was a sense that it wasn't quite right. We were all kind of, I mean, certainly I listened to it. I was like, it's missing something, isn't it? It's not the best album that there is. And in November 1997, even Noel knew that. He said, I'm shutting this down. I've got 35 songs and I don't need to do this. And once the tour for the album came to a close in February 1998, the band took 2 years off. And every band has a point where they change. And when they come back, something's different and the first phase of the glory years is over. For example, if it's Black Sabbath, it's the first time they fired Ozzy in late 77. For example, for Oasis, this was the time where suddenly the band came back. They expected to pick up where they left off, but they can't. You just can't do that. And it was one of those moments where you realise that the band has moved into a second phase. Depeche Mode, for example, when Vince Clarke left, that was the end of the first phase. When Alan Wilder left in 1994, that was the end of the imperial phase. Neil Tennant has the concept of an imperial phase, the point where a band is at the top of the universe and absolutely bulletproof. For Depeche, that was at the end of the Songs of Faith and Devotion, was the moment where that ended. For the Manics, it was probably the moment after When the Masses Against the Classes became a #1 single. Everything they did after that was going to be downhill. Everything Oasis did after the release of Be Here Now was an act of entrenchment and an act of almost becoming a nostalgia act before their time. You know, by the time they were touring the album after this, only 3 songs from that current album were on the tour set list. You know, Gas Panic, Who Feels Love, Go Let It Out. They had singles. They weren't playing live on a regular basis. That's one of the first signs that a band is going down the dumper, isn't it? Is when you're touring and you're not playing your latest single, for example. At least in those days. These days, a single could be anything that's released on streaming. And Ed Sheeran probably releases 14 singles every afternoon. The first release from the album, the first thing that anybody heard from it was Do You Know What I Mean? And Do You Know What I Mean is, again, if I tell you it's too long, it sounds like cocaine, it's got too many guitar solos in, you won't be surprised, will you? Well, here's a nice, lovely CD single, shot in, I think that photograph is shot in a back alley in Wigan, with that photo there of everybody looking somewhere else while the band are staring at the camera. Then the photo from another angle of everybody staring up whilst the band are looking somewhere else. And then the third photo on the back is of a preacher, probably manic, possibly street, shouting at the audience from his bedroom. The idea being that actually the real event, the thing that people should be paying attention to, isn't the band itself. An astute cover, but not necessarily an amazing one. Do You Know What I Mean is too long. It's 7 minutes, 41 seconds of a blizzard of cocaine and ego. And it doesn't have anything in the way of a meaningful hook in it. You sit there and go, all my people right here, right now. Do you know what I mean? Well, no. The emptiness itself is kind of the point. Nobody really knows what you mean. So much so that in 2016, Noel did a remix of it and made that the first single from the reissued version of the album. Noel, even at the time, expected someone to tell him to edit it because 7.5 minutes is too long, even if you are the Beatles doing Hey Jude. Nobody said, this is too long, you need to edit it down. The band had become surrounded by yes men. And it kind of just signifies that there was this sound and fury signifying nothing. So there's a Morse code pattern in this song, a bit of atmospheric production. The Morse code taps out the words BUGGERALL. It means bugger all, absolutely nothing. And it knows it. You know, even Noel was like, I haven't really got a chorus. Do you know what I mean? Because I haven't got anything to communicate here. Sitting in my my stained glass window mansion with Supernova Heights written on it in the Oasis logo. Yeah, it quotes Beatles songs, Fall on the Hill and I Feel Fine, for example. And it's just like, it's the sound of inspiration abandoning the band for the first time. It's good. I mean, it's good, but it's too long. And there's too many drugs, not enough ideas, I think is probably the best way to describe it. And that was the first single. Of course it got to number one. It got to number one because it had to get to number one. There was no choice about it. It was going to be number one, whether you liked it or not. On the B-side of Do You Know What I Mean? Is the fantastic B-side. Oasis still doing amazing B-sides. A track called Stay Young, which really should have been on the album to give it a bit of levity. Stay Young sounds like 5 people in a room making a racket, something that you don't get on the rest of the album at all. And Stay Young is light-hearted, kind of like Diggs's Dinner or something. It wasn't really a hugely meaningful song. It's a romp, to use the right words. But it was booted off the album in favour of Magic Pie. Jesus Christ. What were you thinking, man? Stay Young is actually good. Magic Pie's bullshit. And I don't understand why it was on there. You then get a demo of Angel Child, which was recorded in Mustique and is therefore on the 3rd CD here. And you get a cover of Bowie's Heroes. Oasis were never amazing at covers. They were very obvious in their choices of covers. You know, My Generation, I Am the Walrus, Heroes. This isn't a band that are bringing out deep cuts and making sure that the bands that they love that are pretty obscure can make their mortgage payments, unlike Metallica. This is a band that looked at it and went, fuck it. Yeah, we'll cover the Rolling Stones. Hence Street Fighting Man is on one of the other singles. And it's like, their cover versions are unexceptional. Their cover versions make Depeche Mode look like Shaft. And Depeche Mode are not great at covers, by the way. I should point that out as well. So yeah, do you know what I mean? Number one with a bullet of, and then that was it. You know, number one, Kings, Rulers of the Universe, and then the album comes out on the 21st of August, 1997. Second track on the album is My Big Mouth, and My Big Mouth is a fun song. It's got the lyric about, with my big mouth, you could fly a plane, walking slowly down the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or whatever the lyric is. And, you know, it's fine. It's a funny lyric. It's not as funny as Just Getting Older, which is probably the best Oasis lyric that there is. But it's a funny lyric, but funny isn't always good enough. And 30 guitar tracks on the track is not going to make the difference. My Big Mouth was played live at Nebworth and their associated tour. It was barely played after that, actually. So what does that tell you? How does that grab you? And then track 3 is Magic Pie, the first Noel vocal on there. It's 7.5 minutes of boredom. I don't understand why Magic Pie is on the album. It shouldn't be on the album. It's not good. It really isn't good at all. It's a very tedious song with, like, what is it about? I mean, I'm looking at the lyrics here, you know, and I'm trying to work out what it means. What does it mean here? They are sleeping while they dream and they want to be adored. They don't say what they mean. Will live and die by their own sword. I dig their friends, I dig their shoes, but they are like a child with nothing to lose in their minds. What does that mean? Okay, but I'll have my way in my own time. I'll have my say, my star will shine, my magic pie. I'm like, okay, that's not the best lyric in the world. It's okay. Not the worst song on the album, because the worst song on the album is I Hope, I Think, I Know, swiftly followed by The Girl in the Dirty Shirt. But it's like, what the fuck is a magic pie? Answers on a postcard, please. To 3 Alveston Place, Leamington Spa, in the house where all the bands live. I was like, musically it's fine, but lyrically it communicates nothing. Luckily, we have another track. Track 4, Stand By Me, the second single released from the album. And here is the promotional reproduction 12-inch that was released in 2016 for it, backed with I've Got the Fever, alongside the original car sticker that came from members of the Oasis mailing list. Yeah, I was on that. And there's a CD single, a Creation Records product, and a 12-inch here as well, which is this is one of Oasis's finest EPs. Well, actually, the CD is one of their finest EPs because it has I've Got the Fever, My Sister Lover, and Going Nowhere, and Going Nowhere should be on the album, but it isn't. So you have to live with what you've got. And Stand By Me, again, the lyrics aren't great, and the song has become an advert. And as Freddie Mercury said in his will, whatever you do, don't make me boring. And that means that I now dread every advert break on British television, because you're never more than 36 seconds away from a Queen song. Normally one about a washing liquid called Flash, or something about bicycles, or something about fat-bottomed girls that make your world go round. Something like that, I don't quite know. Instead, Stand By Me is now being licensed out for adverts. I don't begrudge that. I mean, the idea that bands shouldn't do adverts is outdated now. But at the same point, do you have to advertise absolutely everything? Because there's Stand By Me has been licensed out, Let Forever Be has been licensed out. It's pretty much only a matter of time before the American military tried to license Song 2, woohoo, to reveal their latest thermonuclear stealth bomber. Actually, they tried that, and Blur told them to fuck off. So that's probably for the best, isn't it? Nonetheless, Stand By Me I really like it. It's not a hugely substantial song. It opens with the lyric, I made a meal and I threw it up on Sunday. I've got a lot left to learn. But the idea of a companionship, going through life together as a pair and as a couple, it's a lovely sentiment. Not vastly original, but it's a lovely sentiment. The band play it live to this day. And I think it's one of Oasis's finest singles, actually, Stand By Me. It's got a surprising lack of guile and a degree of emotional tenderness that you wouldn't normally associate with Oasis at all. So it's a fine single, released on the 21st of September 1997. It got to number 2 in the UK charts, did very well. And of course, you then have the first massive misstep on the album with I Hope, I Think, I Know, which even to this point, I don't remember anything about that song. I don't remember a riff. I don't remember a lyric. It hasn't even got one line that I can remember. And you should never put forgettable songs on your albums unless you're Van Morrison and you've released 48 albums since Breakfast. You shouldn't do it. By the way, Van Morrison has only released 48 albums in the whole of his career. I looked it up. But yes, I Hope, I Think, I Know is not a great song at all. And it's followed up with The Girl in the Dirty Shirt, which was only played live by Oasis once in Dublin in 1997, where Liam genuinely lost his voice as opposed to pissed his voice away with a lager. And what that did, actually, is that song is about Meg Matthews, who was then later Noel's wife, a girl who had a dirty shirt because she couldn't get home to get a clean one, and so therefore went out in a dirty shirt. And I'm kind of going, if that's what you're writing songs about, you're not writing songs about much, are you? Musically, it's okay, unexceptional, but lyrically, forgettable, very, very forgettable. And yeah, one of the low points of the album. And bear in mind, my 3 least favourite songs on the album have been in the past 4 songs. So that's songs 3, 5, and 6. And when you've got 3 bad songs out of your first 6, that's not a good look, and it doesn't go well with those trousers, does it? So you then turn the album over. In the days when people were buying vinyl, this is the 2009 Big Brother reissue, by the way, in case you were thinking this is a Creation Records original. Therefore, it has a different inner sleeve and photos. But what you end up with is the side 3, track 1 or track 7 is Fading Out, which to me is taking a huge amount of Stone Roses lessons. If you could have put Ian Brown's vocal on Fading Out and you would have thought it slotted right into The Second Coming. Now that is by no means a criticism, because The Second Coming is a fantastic album. Fading Out was a compelling, fascinating monster of a beast played live. I saw the band 3 times on the Be Here Now tour, twice in Birmingham at the National Indoor Arena and once at the Cardiff Indoor Arena as well on about the 9th of December 1997. And Fading Out was a highlight of those gigs. I absolutely loved it. It sounded immense and enormous. It really worked. But on record, immense and enormous is completely different. Standing in a room with 20,000 people when they hear a song and respond to it, very different world from listening to it on a crappy C90 tape on a Matsui like little pocket Walkman as you're walking down the street to go to the supermarket to buy yourself, I don't know, some melons and some bread and stuff like that. It's a very, very different world indeed. And so Fading Out is fine, but it's fine. It's too long. There's more in it than there is actual song. It doesn't need to be the length that it is. It's probably got one guitar solo too many. And again, cocaine. It's a hell of a drug. And it's followed up then by what I regard to be... Now, this will surprise some of you. And some of you will go, oh, at last, because someone's got some taste. My favourite Oasis song, Don't Go Away. The fourth single released from the album, only in Japan. Don't Go Away is a phenomenal song. I wish it was played live. There is a beautiful acoustic version of it by Noel that was recorded for European television in March 1998. I will link to it elsewhere on this YouTube, but it is a phenomenal song. It's talks about what Van Morrison called the inarticulate speech of the heart. It says, damn my education, I haven't got the words to say all the thoughts that are in my mind. And the cold and frosty morning, and it's wonderful. It is. And then the chorus says, don't go away, say what you'll say that you'll stay forever and a day, because I need more time. And although originally it's a lyric that is actually written from Noel to his mum, knowing that she is not immortal. You could also look at Don't Go Away about the end of any great lifelong love affair, and many people have that one person that they kind of suddenly they meet and vibe with, and they go, you're my human. And Don't Go Away is the sound of the fear and the loneliness and the tenderness that comes with that knowledge that your person isn't going to be with you for every second of everything, that they might not be here because they need more time. They need more time just to make things right. And yeah, so it was released as the fourth single from the album, only in Japan. The fourth single was backed with, and I'll quickly check, a live version of Cigarettes and Alcohol from Manchester's GMX, a studio recording of Sad Song, which is on the vinyl editions of Definitely Maybe, and the War Child mix of Fade Away. The War Child mix, by the way, is on the Help Charity album that was recorded in late 1995. So it's its first release on an Oasis single. But yeah, Don't Go Away is my favourite Oasis song, and the acoustic version of it, that's just Noel and the guitar. I mean, if that had been on the album, what an amazing release that would have been. Of course, the Japanese, unsurprisingly, going full pelt with all the packaging. You've got a Japanese lyric sheet. You've even got a fold-out poster, which I'm not quite sure who would have signed off that particularly unlovely photograph of Liam to go on there, but also this one, which perhaps makes the band look a little less like it's just one person. But yeah, lovely bit of packaging. Paid that. And I personally think, by the way, that if you are in Oasis's management and you're thinking about reissues, put the 12 inches out again, and put things like Don't Go Away out on 12 inch. It's long overdue. Make them coloured vinyl if you really, really want to. I know you guys are doing a 7-inch single series. Do a 12-inch single series. That will help. Or maybe when you do reissues of the albums, do the album and the associated 12 inches in a box set. Charge loads of money. You'll make a bomb. I'm sure you will. Okay? There you are. That's a free marketing plug for Oasis. But yeah, Don't Go Away, one of my favourite Oasis songs. You have Be Here Now, which is the title track to the album, of course. And Be Here Now takes its name from a John Lennon interview where someone asked, what's the point of rock and roll? And he went, to be here now. It's to live in this moment. And that's actually it's a very interesting philosophy, is to live in this moment, not to be focused on what's before you, what's behind you, but to focus on what's happening at this precise moment in time, and to be able to, as Michael Stipe said, about what's the meaning of REM is remember every moment, is to be in that moment. It's really important to live in the here and now. Obviously, you need to remember and understand and be cognizant of history. Otherwise, you won't know how you've got here and you'll be lost. But at the same point, is to be in this moment and to try and live every day to its fullest. Carpe diem, baby, as Metallica and Nick Cave had it. Okay, flipping the album over. Side 4, last side, we have All Around the World, the band's very own Yellow Submarine, written in a rehearsal studio in 1992. It goes on for about 9 minutes. It fades out, becomes another song called It's Getting Better Man, which was played live at Nebworth. And then it goes back into being All Around the World because you can't have enough of the song. All Around the World is... Well, the lyrics are awful, actually. I watched the G-Mex show that was broadcast on MTV recently. And I was watching the lyrics and going, what does that mean? It's just it dip dog shit, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog kind of level of lyric writing, where stuff rhymes because it's got to rhyme and not because it actually has to mean anything. Now, you can argue they're just words. It's verbal punctuation. It's like, bits of glam rock where it's like, oh, that's sweet, that's sweet, that's sweet, that's sweet. I really love your tiger feet. What does that mean? It means nothing. It doesn't have to mean anything. But if you are going to write something, at least kind of sit down and look at it and go, yeah, that's rubbish. I don't know what it means, but it's rubbish. So, for example, the lyrics to All Around the World, for example, it's got this lyric, so where are you going to swim with the riches that you found? And if you're lost at sea, well, I hope that you're drowned. And it's like... It's a bit early in the midnight hour for me to go through all the things I want to be. I don't believe in everything I see. You know, I'm blind, so why'd you disagree? And it's like, what? They're words, but it's like someone's like putting together a song with Scrabble letters, and they're going, well, I've got a D and it's got to end in E. What are we going to do? Disagree? Yeah, right, that'll do. Fuck it. No one's going to notice. Take me away because I just don't want to say. And the lies you make me say are getting deeper every day. These are crazy days, but they make me shine. Time keeps rolling by. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. But it doesn't have to mean anything. It just has to sound good when it's sung by 60,000 drunk people in a field when you're all off your box, sorted for ease and whiz. And that's where these songs live. That's what these songs are designed for, is to be sung by millions in fields, in gigs, and when you're driving your car and you're stuck at the traffic lights. And that's not a criticism. These songs aren't always meant to be high art. They're not meant to be. They're meant to be fun. They're meant to be entertainment. They're meant to be rock and roll. And if you're looking for great art, frankly, other bands are available. And sometimes, and as I've said this before, I'm not an Oasis fan. You might think I am. I'm not. I'm a Noel Gallagher fan. Oasis, not great. They were a vehicle for Noel to deliver his songs and to make them sound bigger than God's. Noel on his own is still, I would prefer, give me a chance to see Noel on his own as a solo artist or Oasis every day of the week. I would pick solo Noel. That probably makes me a lesser human being in some eyes, but that's okay. Life would be boring if we all liked the same stuff, wouldn't it? And All Around the World just kind of plods on and on and on and on. It's kind of like somebody who ordered Hey Jude off Temu, but there you go. And with that, Be Here Now comes to an end. 12 songs, 72 minutes, a fuck ton of cocaine. It's too long and too many songs. And instead, the band went on tour. They released a couple of extra singles. So they, obviously, as I've mentioned before, they released Stand By Me, which is, I regard as one of Oasis's best EPs. This actually works really, really well as a 4-track EP. Got to number 2 in the charts. The video is kind of like a reverse version of a bank robbery. So it starts with a police chase and it ends with the bank robbery itself. It's got Stand By Me on it, but it's also got I've Got the Fever, My Sister Lover, and one of my very favourite songs written by Noel Gallagher, Going Nowhere. The kind of song that Noel specialises in that you don't necessarily hear about, that kind of sense of somewhat defeated, somewhat sad, somewhat desolate. When you're starting to get to sleep and your brain starts to unravel a bit, and things don't necessarily make a huge amount of sense, and you end up saying things like "monkey stole my money," like the fish in Finding Nemo. Going Nowhere has that kind of woozy dream logic around that sense of tired sleepiness, and it's a wonderful song. It really is. I pop it into the Oasis set list now, but since I'm not in charge of that, I'm afraid to say you won't get Stay Young at gigs, you won't get Going Nowhere at gigs, you won't get Stop Crying Your Heart Out, which are all three songs which I'll put in Oasis' set list for every show they ever play. But there you go, I'm not in the band. Besides which, if I was in the band, I'd wear a t-shirt with potato written on it. I'd probably get fired by Liam for revitalising or reopening old wounds. Oops. So there you go. Going Nowhere is heavily influenced by Burt Bacharach, by the way. So if you like Burt Bacharach, you'll like Going Nowhere. And the third single released from the album was All Around the World. And it's backed with Fame, Flashbacks and Street Fighting Man. Street Fighting Man, a cover version of the Rolling Stones, and about as exciting as it could ever get, i.e. not very. For the recording of the Fame and Flashbacks, and I should point out, is that it said Liam went on the piss for 2 days, then turned up and said, "My voice is fucked." Why the fuck did he do that? Said Noel. Well, he's right, isn't he? Why the fuck did he do that? But he'd rather get drunk and fuck up his voice than actually sing on a record, which is his actual fucking job. So what do I do? You could argue that that's a degree of ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, or PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance. It's like knowing what society's expectations are and just refusing to conform to them in a flex of power. Well, come on, man. You're the singer in Oasis. That voice has made you incredibly rich. It means you never have to work another day in your life. At least show that some respect. But that's not what it is. From the outside, Liam looked like an asshole. And there's further behaviour, such as the MTV Unplugged gig, that further reinforces that position. But that is just me making a view from the outside, having to get up and go to work every morning. I haven't got the luxury of just ringing and going, "I can't be bothered to sing because I'm drunk. It'll be all right, don't worry," and then go back and fall over back to sleep in my mansion because, hey, I'm not an asshole. But there you go. All Around the World, to me, All Around the World was the sense that Oasis had gone too far, that they'd disappeared a little bit into their own world. To quote Robert Lagaya in Scarface, got high on their own supply. Had started to believe their own hype and thought that they were invincible. And the problem is, when you think you're invincible, the more satisfying it is when you find out you're not, depending on who you talk to and what the circumstances are behind that. But we ended up with, Liam not turning up to a recording, which I think was a very, very poor form. The band went on tour, and as I said, that I saw them 3 times. I saw them twice at the Birmingham Indoor Arena, and I saw them at the at Cardiff as well. And I bought a CDR bootleg in one days, the very first CDR bootlegs. Recorded at the Birmingham NIA on the 30th of September 1997. I don't remember much about this show, which proves that I was there. What I do remember is I had an ear infection and I was deaf in one ear, so I heard the gig through this ear, not that ear, and so I stood on this ear, so I stood on Noel's side of the stage so I could actually hear what was going on, and it was thoroughly, absolutely okay in every respect. The set list for the tour was pretty good. In terms of the songs I didn't want them to play, there was Magic Pie, but everything else was pretty solid, really. You had Be Here Now, Stay Young, Stand By Me, Supersonic, some might say Roll With It, but you know what I mean, Magic Pie, Don't Look Back in Anger, Wonderwall, Live Forever, It's Getting Better Man, Champagne Super Duper, Fade In Out, All Around the World, and then a final encore of Acquiesce. This show is also on YouTube in a single camera VHS shot bootleg edition of it. And then the band came to an end. They ended the tour in South America. I think their last show with Bonehead and Giggsy was in Mexico in late March 1998, and the first moment where the band were starting to show that they were perhaps not quite the Invincible Machine and starting to turn into a nostalgia device was with the release later in 1998 of the B-Sides compilation, widely regarded as the 4th album, The Master Plan. This is a great B-sides compilation. It's up there with Hatful of Hollow. Yes, I change a couple of things about it. I put my sister lover, and I've got the fever on it. I would probably ditch Listen Up because it's not particularly good. Maybe Underneath the Sky, and I would change the track listing around a little bit. Originally on CD, like all of them, and again, I changed the picture that's in the inside there so that it felt more like a cover. So, and this is one of the great things about CDs, is if you don't like the cover, you can just change it. So that's my cover for the Master Plan CD, a thoroughly fabulous B-sides compilation. And here is the 25th anniversary silver vinyl version on Big Brother that was reissued in, I think, 2023. Managed to find a relatively cheap and affordable copy of it. And for those of you who are wondering, that's the silver vinyl, which is kind of marbled and quite nice. But I found a cheap and affordable copy of it, which is absolutely fine. I love the cover to this, the idea of a kid teaching the adults what to do whilst the adults were, disparaging various things. But then again, as you know, probably sometimes when you're younger, you feel like you know the answer to absolutely everything. And as you get older, you start to become, I think, more corrupt. It's a difficult position to be in, but it's a nice, funny cover. It's a great B-sides compilation, one of the best B-sides compilation. And if you're an Oasis fan, your Oasis collection is not complete without this B-side set, because it has some songs which are both amazing. Also, around about the same time, I think, was this 4-track CD, Oasis, to be played in store only, not for resale. I bought this off a guy that ran a store that didn't give a toss about Oasis and didn't care, and so therefore was quite happy to sell it to me for a £5 after he'd got sent it for absolutely free. And I'd like to thank the respective record company H Headquarters Q for their contribution to my record collection. This, I think, was published to go alongside the reissues of the singles in late 1996, but also works as a kind of a little EP of some of the best B-sides. I mean, obviously it's got Fade Away, Half the World Away, Acquiesce and the Master Plan on, and because the CD singles were missing certain songs, so for example, this had, I think, the first vinyl version of the Master Plan on it, amongst some other tracks as well. So good, first vinyl edition of Going Nowhere is on here as well. So if you were that way inclined, that's the way to go. So that is Oasis's absolutely awful cocaine binge fury that is Be Here Now and the Master Plan. Obviously the band have reformed. They're playing shows at the moment. They're probably playing a stadium nowhere near you right now for far too much money, and that's okay. We'll always have the records. Some of these are fantastic, some of these not so fantastic. But what I would say is Be Here Now is probably 4/5 a really good album, and you can change a couple of tracks and have a much, much better record. But like lots of artists, what Oasis needed at that time, and they didn't have, was somebody that was going to go back to them and say, you've gone too far. Everybody needs a counterweight that pulls them back, otherwise they get lost in their own ideas. And so it's important, I think, for everyone to have, a bullshit detector. Larry Mullen is U2's bullshit detector. No matter what the idea is, he'll always go, is this a good idea? Are you really, really sure? Solo artists, especially people like Prince, surround themselves with yes men, and nobody says no to them. Other artists with names beginning with M and ending in Oracy possibly have the same situation. Oasis were in this situation as well, because they'd been so successful for so long, completely on their own terms because of their own decisions. They automatically fell into the greatness fallacy that every decision that they made was going to be amazing, irrespective of whether it actually was amazing. And you end up thinking you're fantastic. Your every failure is sabotage. Your every success is due to your own genius. It's a very dangerous place to be. And I wish someone had pulled Noel to one side and went, a couple of the songs are too long. Luckily, the internet never forgets, and there is a blog spot where someone's pulled together a less cocaine-driven version of the album with shorter mixes and different tracks on there. I probably can't tell you where it is, but that's my preferred version of listening to the album. And of course, from being here now, it's now a case of looking at it and thinking about being there then. I was there then, I'm here now, 25 years on, or 20 28 years on. Good God, I feel old. 28 years on now. Be Here Now was just the next Oasis record. No more and no less important in their canon than anything else. In the same way that when AC/DC released Flick of a Switch or Fly on the Wall, is you went, it's just another AC/DC album. Oasis are the indie AC/DC, and that is not a criticism, that is praise. They have written some amazing songs. I am glad that they are back. I look forward to the next songs released from Noel and not quite so much from Liam. And that is a completely different conversation as we get further into it. At the end of this process, Bonehead and Giggsy left the band. Oasis were never the same, and we were moving into phase 2. Oasis as a brand and a band, as a bunch of professionals executing rock and roll on stadiums and arenas across the world, and not necessarily riding the crest of a wave anymore, but more correctly captaining their own ship. We'll find out what happens then when we go to Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. But in the meantime, like every time, take care of yourselves and each other. Be excellent to each other. Stay beautiful. And I will see you soon. Okay, thank you. And of course, don't forget, potato.